The popular buzz phrase that it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill is really just lazy paraphrasing of what the actual idea is. You see, this lazy paraphrasing came from a lazy interpretation of an idea in Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers. You see, the idea was that you have to at least have 10,000 dedicated hours towards a skill in order to achieve mastery in it. But there's a key word here that's missing, and I believe that is deliberate. You see, deliberate just means done consciously with intentionality. It just simply means you're aware of the action that you're doing and all its little nooks and crannies. However, Naval Ravikant gave me a better definition of what truly leads to mastery in a certain discipline. It's 10,000 iteration loops that leads to mastery. Loops where you do something, you take a second to pause and reflect on your actions and the results of them. You decide to change a certain variable and you try again. It's 10,000 of these loops that leads to mastery, because these iteration loops are the true process of learning. And today, we're going to talk about the iteration loop that I plan to implement to help make me a better trader. Hey, this is probably your first time seeing me. It's nice to meet you. The name is pronounced Shangab, and I'm just a small day trader that's just YouTubing his experience and his lessons and insights along the way. If you feel any way compelled to support this small channel, I would greatly appreciate if you can either like or subscribe or leave a comment for feedback. Any one of those will be extremely helpful for me, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and now let's get into the actual video. Part 1 of this video is probably the most important part. It's beginning with the end in mind, or in our case, defining our goal. Before we even discuss what my iteration loop is planning to be, we need to understand what I'm optimizing for here. It's one fucking word: edge. You see, an objective definition of edge to me is when your expected value is greater than 0. That means that whatever you're doing, you're making money in the long run. You have a positive equity curve. But in order to understand what edge is, we first need to understand what expected value is. So I plan to bring you to my whiteboard that I just got to show you. All right, excuse the bad audio because I probably sound like I am 10 light years away, which is true. But expected value, let's start with a simple definition of it. Expected value is just basically the average amount that you would win or lose per trade if you repeated the same strategy or the same decision or the same pattern, whatever it is, right? If you repeated the same action over and over, it is the average amount that you would win or lose. Hence why it's called expected value. So for edge, you want a positive expected value. Now let's go over the formula for expected value. So EV, which stands for expected value, is just your probability of winning, right? Times the average amount you win when you do win, minus, right, the probability of you losing times the average amount you'll lose when you lose. All of this right here gives you expected value, and it should give it to you in a dollar format. So let's say, for example, right, we have a 54, and sorry, my handwriting is horrible, but a 54% win rate, right? And on average, when we win, if we're risking $100, let's say we make 65 of it, right? So it'll be 54% times 65, right? Minus, well, if we have a 54 win percent, right? Simple math means we have a 46% probability of losing. 46% of the times we'll lose. So out of that 46% of the times, let's say we only lose on average $50. So it'll be our probability win rate, right? Which when we have a win rate of 54, times the amount that we make on average every time we win, minus the probability of us losing times the amount we'll lose. And I'm not doing this math in my head, so I use my calculator. We have an expectancy of $12.10, which means on average for every trade that we take using the exact same decision making or strategy, we will be making $12.10, which is a positive equity curve. So one really neat way of looking at this, instead of looking at the outcome of every single trade, you understand that every trade that you execute flawlessly on, you just made yourself $12.10. So now that we understand what expected value is, edge is just simply an expected value that is over 0. So this is what I'm optimizing for. I'm optimizing for 2 to 3 of these plays that have positive expected value or edge within the next 49 days. So now let's get into the iteration loop. So step 1 is hypothesis or hypothesize, however you want to fucking say it. The goal here is to come up with a specific pattern or a decision-making framework that you believe may have edge. Now, some tips that I'll give in my experience of just kind of creating ideas that I think may have edge is to 1, observe the market intentionally, watching for actions or patterns that happen at specific levels often. You can do this by recording film or just looking back at your charts at the end of the day. Either way, try and find repeatable setups. The second thing is to deconstruct significant moves. This is called reverse engineering. If you notice something that happened in the day that was a pretty significant move and you would have felt like, hey, this was an easy trade, try and re-engineer what happened. Try and work backwards to see what were the confluences or what were the factors that led to this big move. Step 2 is to test these hypotheses to see if it holds up. Now, I recommend you do your testing in 2 phases, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. The first phase should be a backtesting phase, whether it's gaining your data by going back in TradingView and looking back on previous days, or developing code to outline certain conditions that happen. Whatever it is, you need to backtest and you need to gain historical data on your hypothesis and how it plays out. The second phase, I honestly believe, is the most important, and that is to actually live test it. Right? So many times we have, as traders, went back and back tested something and with past data and it worked beautifully. But as soon as we started to trade it with live data, it just started to fall apart. This is why I recommend you put it through 2 phases, and the second one be live testing, right? With very minimal risk or size. 1 micro contract if you're trading futures. Your goal here should be to get at least a sample size of 10 to 20 trades before you start calculating expectancy. Step 3, which is the most important, pause, review, and reflect. Now, personally, I'm going to look at my data. There's a few important KPIs that I will be looking at. 1, of course, expectancy, which we just explained not too long ago. 2, average win to loss ratio. I want to know how much am I making on average for my winners and how much I'm making on average on my losers. This is also an expectancy. 3, which I think is probably the least important out of these 4, but win rate. And 4, maximal favorable excursion and maximal adverse excursion. These 2 metrics calculate your drawdown and your upside in your live trades. For example, MAE, or maximal adverse excursion, looks at how much drawdown you take on average for every trade. Let's say on average you take at least 10 points of heat. You know when you're in a trade and you're at that 5-point mark of drawdown, not to start worrying. It's a very important KPI that I honestly like looking at. And it's the opposite for MFE, maximal favorable excursion. It's just showing you how much on average you are in profit. And step 4 is to adjust and repeat. Now, me personally, I'm planning to adjust based off of my KPIs. So for example, expectancy is going to tell me whether I should adjust or leave it alone. It's going to be my goal metric that I'll be looking at, my leading indicator. Like, it's going to tell me if I need to even adjust in the first place or if any previous refinements I did actually made my edge better or worse. And then also, like, for example, average win and loss ratio, or MAE and MFE. I'll be making adjustments off of these by targeting adjustments that allows me to hold on and make more for my winners, or to be less forgiving with my losers. and learn how to cut some of them short. So that's my iteration loop. That's the loop that I plan to go through to get better as a trader. Let's talk about my plan for the next 49 days. Now, I decided to give myself such a short time frame so I can really focus on the actions that are really going to help me build 2 to 3 plays with positive expected value. So this is what I'm planning to do. First things first, I'm going to be going through this iteration loop 3 to 5 times a week. I do work a full-time job, so I don't have that much time on my hands, but I'm going to try and make a commitment to go through this loop 3 to 5 times a week. Now, if you want to join this with me, let's go over the different levels. So level 1, which is beginner, would just be going through this iteration loop once a week. Level 2, which is intermediate, would be doing the same as me, going through this loop 3 to 5 times a week. Now, level 3, which would be advanced, and honestly, I think would be seeing the most progress out of all of us, would be someone who goes through this loop every single day. That person probably would make an insane amount of progress. But again, you have to keep in mind the time that you have. Some people may not be able to go through this loop every single day. Either way, try to find at least one time through the week where you can go through this iteration loop to get better, because the key point that I'm trying to make in this video is that you do not master a skill by just putting in 10,000 hours. You master a skill and discipline by putting in 10,000 iterations. And I'll be ending this video on that note.